have in our Zoom room tonight, I just have a few pastors and leaders that we invited to come in a small group in the Zoom room tonight to really welcome a very, very special guest that we have with us tonight. And by the way, let me remind everybody, if this is your first time watching, that we have been doing this now. This is our 56th night in a row. And when the President of the United States called the nation to a national day of prayer on a Sunday, he began to talk about a 15-day window to suppress this virus. Immediately when he did, I felt like that we were supposed to honor that Sunday, and then we were to do a 14-day communion fast right here online, taking communion every night for 14 nights, which would take us out to that 15-day window. And then what happened was, at the end of that, none of us really wanted to quit. So we've been meeting online with leaders literally from all over the world as we've gathered on here for 56 nights in a row. At the end of the call, we will be taking communion together. We've had worship music from Hong Kong. We've had speakers from Iraq. We've had from Argentina. We've had from the Netherlands. We've had from other places, Italy. And so we're just really excited about what God is doing in the nations of the earth. But tonight, we really are praying and contending, as we have every night, for the United States. And tonight, we are going to commit the absolute bulk of our time together tonight to a very honored guest that we have with us tonight, Harry Mihet. Harry is the Vice President of Legal Affairs, and he is the Chief Litigation Counsel for the Liberty Counsel. And I'm going to go to the gallery view of the Zoom room, and I have everyone on there muted except Mr. Harry Mihet. And man, it's so good to see you. And look, we just love Liberty Counsel. I am a big fan of Liberty Counsel, and I know that the volume of people in our nation that are increasingly appreciative of the work that you do personally and that Liberty Counsel does collectively is really a redeeming and an amazing work in the United States. And we just want to honor Matt Staver, pastor, founder, executive officer, whatever his title is, and the founder of Liberty Counsel. And I met Harry Mihet a number of years ago in a prayer case out of Santa Rosa County, Florida. And the case was fought right here in the federal court in Pensacola. And they won that case, and it was remarkable. And I have been a big fan of Harry Mihet and Liberty Counsel and Matt Staver ever since then. And Harry, just to let you know, Matt has jumped on here a few nights over the 56 nights, and he's jumped in and watched and all that. And so that's been great. So you all do me a favor, because I want to just give the bulk of this time to Harry Mihet. And he's going to talk to us about Kentucky. They've been very involved, as you all know, in Kentucky, and had a great victory last night. So with all of that said, I want to get out of the way. And Harry Mihet, welcome. We're honored that you're here tonight. And so I'm going to turn it over to you and just kind of give us a brief introduction of who you are. I know that you guys live down in South Florida, and you got a beautiful family. One's an aspiring artist, I see on your Facebook. I believe that would be Gabriel, right?
Right.
And so take just a minute, introduce yourself, and then let's get down to business.
Well, Brother Rick, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for giving me the chance to be with you and with these special folks tonight. I'm privileged to be with you. I'm privileged to be part of the ministry of Liberty Counsel and to be on the front lines on the battle for our Constitution and on the battle for the church and for freedom and for God's people. It's my passion. It's my calling. I don't know if most of your viewers know or not, but I happen to have grown up in a communist country. I grew up in Romania. My dad was a pastor of 17 mostly underground churches during the time of the communists, and I grew up watching him put in handcuffs and harassed by the secret police for nothing more than preaching the word of God, for having church meetings when the government told him he couldn't have church meetings. And I used to tell him as a kid, when they take him away, I'd say, Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to make sure that you get justice and this doesn't happen to you. And he'd look at me with some pity, because he knew that in communist Romania, a preacher's son could never be allowed to go to law school and become a lawyer. That just was not something you could even dream of. But God had bigger plans, and he brought our family to this great nation, a dream come true for us. And I tell you, little did I think growing up in communist Romania that I would grow up one day to have to defend my dad and other pastors like him in the land of the free. It's kind of interesting how history tends to repeat itself in different places. But in any event, we can talk about our work, especially in this time. As you mentioned, I'm married to a beautiful wife. We have 2 sons, Gabriel and Nathan, and we live in South Florida. We're just blessed, and God is good.
And Harry, let me ask you a question. I know growing up in Romania, I think the revolution and the removal of Nicolae Ceausescu, was that 80, 85, 89?
Christmas 89. Christmas 89. Christmas Day of 1989. I was 12, and it was the first day of freedom that I ever experienced. The first 12 years of my life, I lived under oppression, and we had a revolution for about 7 days, started in the town where I happened to be living. So I have vivid memories of being out in the square demanding libertate for ourselves. I remember the tanks coming in. I remember the army and the bullets flying and people dying because they wanted to be free. But that experience at the young age of 12 had a lot to do with how I think today.
Yeah,
and a lot to do with why I love freedom so much.
Well, when you were saying that, I literally had a picture in my mind of that show on TV. It's called Forged in Fire, if you've ever seen that. And I'm sure that those events and the way you saw your father in that time period and the ramifications of that in your family was really a forged in fire moment for your history. And so,
yeah, we went through some very tough times, and that's probably a whole separate evening and a whole separate show where I could talk about what that experience was like and how we watched God intervene in miraculous circumstances over and over again to protect his people. So that's not tonight's topic, but nevertheless, sometimes when we go through difficulties, we wonder why God are you allowing us to go through that? And now on the other side of it, 30 years removed from those experiences, I am so thankful that I got to live under oppression. That sounds weird, but I'm really thankful, because I think I have a perspective that maybe a lot of my fellow Americans who have always known freedom, always enjoyed freedom, don't have. Right. And I think God's given me a special understanding and a special calling for such a time as this, and I give him the glory for that.
All right. And the bulk of our time tonight, as you stated, we really want to focus on Kentucky. But I don't want to go there without mentioning, for the audience here, that you guys are involved on the front for freedom in a number of different places. I've tracked the case that you all are holding with Pastor Ken Graves out of Maine. And I know he's facing a real situation tomorrow. And actually, I thought this morning, if I could be anywhere today in the country I'd like to be in Maine, and I'd like to be Ken Graves' associate pastor right now. And so, but we know you're doing that in Maine. We know the Romanian pastors in Illinois, which has to be powerfully close to you. and then we've seen Florida and you know, many other places as well. But tonight we want to really focus on Kentucky. Kentucky had a great victory last night. So tell us a little bit about how you guys got involved and kind of bring us up to through a timeline up to kind of a really great and significant victory last night.
So, Brother Rick, I mean, I have to say, you know, we started from 2 or 3 non-negotiable positions at the whole outset of this whole COVID-19 virus. You know, yes, the virus is serious, and yes, we need to take it seriously, and we need to be safe and all that. I get all that. But the non-negotiable propositions that we started with is number one, the church is an essential entity. Not just, I mean, yes, the church is the people for sure. 2 or 3 gathered in his name, Christ is there, but the church is essential. The church building is essential, and the church can minister from its building in a way that it can't always minister on Zoom. And so that's, to me, that's a non-negotiable. Church is essential. And I will not sit by and have our government declare that abortion clinics and liquor stores and law firms and accountants and libraries and every other kind of place is essential, but the church is not essential. To me, that's offensive, and I cannot stand for it. I just won't. Number 2, the Constitution, the First Amendment right to free speech, free exercise of religion, free assembly. These are not rights that we get from our governor that he can give to us or take from us whenever he pleases. These are rights that we get from God Almighty himself. The Constitution merely protects those rights, but Governor Bashir didn't give us those rights, and he can't take them away from us. They're not his to take. And also, the Constitution doesn't take a break. There's no pause button on the Constitution during a pandemic. The Constitution is just as effective and applicable during war as it is in peace, during a pandemic as during, you know, times of health and prosperity. In fact, I would say it's even more applicable.
Come on.
And so, Brother Rick, you know, we watched how these perhaps well-meaning people, you know, at the beginning came out and issued all these rules and regulations, but somewhere along the lines, at least some of them decided that you cannot let a crisis go to waste, and have been using the crisis to enlarge the power of the government, to increase the authority of the government and of the governors in a way that the Constitution doesn't permit, not only to impose discriminatory rules against the church and its people now, but I believe also to do so in the future. Once you establish the precedent in a time of pandemic, that precedent will be there in a time of peace. And so because of all these reasons, we've been sounding the alarm from the very beginning on this. I have to say, we didn't have very many friends at the very beginning. You know, I spent a lot of time arguing with well-meaning Christians about this at the beginning. But you know, this is what God has called us to. And I'm so thankful to see now that there is, in fact, a movement and an awakening, and people are realizing that there are some worse things that can happen to you and to our nation than a virus. And that's the loss of our liberty, the loss of our Constitution, and the loss of our rights. So we've been privileged to be in this fight. As you mentioned, we've got cases in Kentucky, in Virginia, in Illinois, in Maine. We're filing lawsuits at the rate of about 1 or 2 a week. And they're keeping us very busy. Our team has been up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. every night for a while now. We badly need a vacation. God is good, though. God is giving us supernatural strength, and he's bringing us victories as well. So in Kentucky, we started out with the governor who said church is not essential. You can go to all these stores. You can go to Walmart. 100 people in a Walmart is fine, but 10 people in a church that seats 300 is you know, against the law. It's illegal. We've had a church, you know, Maryville Baptist, where on Easter Sunday, the governor sent state troopers to show up in the parking lot with badges and guns, and to put warning stickers on people's cars. Even people that were in their car listening to a drive-in service are hounded and harassed by the state police. quarantine letters and the like. So we couldn't stand by and watch that happen. We filed a federal lawsuit. Where, when you file a lawsuit, you are randomly given to a judge. And so randomly we were assigned to one judge who happened to have been appointed by President Obama. He promptly denied our lawsuit, our motion for an injunction, said there's nothing wrong with what Andy Bashir is doing. Everything's fine and honky-dory. You got nothing to complain about. He's got your best interest at heart. And someday, in his good timing, he will reopen the church. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was the effect of what this judge was saying to us. So we knew that couldn't be right. We filed an emergency appeal to the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, and things were moving very fast. Last Saturday, a week ago today, they issued their first ruling in which they said, yeah, the judge below missed the boat, didn't get it, got it wrong. We're going to reverse him. We think that the church is likely to win in this case. It's still preliminary, still early, but you cannot treat a church differently than other people. The same rules have to apply across the board, they said. And some great lines in that opinion. I commit it to you and your readers, but they say things like, if you can walk down the aisle at Walmart without dying, then you can walk down the aisle in the church as well without dying. If you can interact with the cashier or the delivery person at your door, then you can interact with a pastor from 6 feet away as well. And so the court recognized that the church wasn't looking for special treatment, wasn't looking to flout rules to pack hundreds of people in a small space just for the sake of tempting God, The church simply wanted to have the same chance to follow the same social distancing guidelines as everybody else. And the Sixth Circuit said, yes, that's a valid claim. You're likely to win on that claim. Now, last Saturday, they just said, we're gonna put a stop to the ban on drive-in services and outdoor services. Governor Bashir, you can't block those anymore. But we're not gonna go all the way and say that the church can have in-person services. They stopped short. They said, we're going to send this back to the lower court judge and give him another chance to look at that issue, right, with the guidance that we have provided. So we end up back before the judge that just got reversed. And
he was happy to see you, wasn't he?
Yeah, I tell you, very different approach and attitude and understanding. And so we filed a lot more paperwork this week, focusing on the issue of in-person services. Governor Bashir sent all his lawyers, and they opposed us, and they were screaming bloody murder. It's going to be the end of the world if you allow churches to start having in-person services, even with social distancing. Well, Friday, about 2:30 p.m., the Court of Appeals, the Sixth Circuit, the 3 judges said, hey, we want to know by 3 o'clock today whether y'all think you may need us over the weekend. I've never seen that happen before. Very unusual for the Court of Appeals, the 3 judges that held in our favors, to kind of say, hey, how's it going in the lower court? And do you think you might need us to do anything over the weekend? Yeah. So they issue that order. So we let them know, hey, we've been before the court and we filed all this paperwork and we haven't heard anything. And so we may well need you to step in again. Well, an hour later, about 4 p.m., we get the ruling from the lower court again. And in this second ruling, the lower court judge, the trial judge, says, yes, I got it wrong before, but now I know that you cannot treat the church differently. The church has the same constitutional rights as everyone else. Come on. And it's unconstitutional to impose requirements on the church that you don't impose on other people. So he entered an injunction stopping Governor Bashir from enforcing his orders against Maryville Baptist Church. At the same time, another judge in Kentucky entered an injunction issuing a statewide injunction, meaning Governor Bashir cannot enforce his orders against any church in Kentucky at this point if the church follows the same guidelines, the same social distancing precautions as other life-sustaining or essential places of business, which we've always said we were willing and happy and eager to do. So tremendous, tremendous victory for the church, for the Constitution. It's from a court of appeals now too, and which means that we have the opportunity to create precedent across the country, and that's what we're trying. So we're very excited to see that a lot of hard work is paying some good dividend for the kingdom.
Well, man, I just want you to know, and I know everybody that's watching this live and will watch it later on, I just want you to know how much we are just so grateful for your work and your ministry and that of Matt and Liberty Counsel. It is just almost unconscionable where we find ourselves as a nation, and yet to know that we have you guys that are out there willing to go before a judge and prepare the paperwork and do the litigation and fight battles in the arena of the legal system that most of us, it's not our calling, it's not where we are adapted or trained, but we're just really so honored that you guys are doing that. Now, I know I've been having a number of questions from other pastors and leaders in Kentucky. A couple of things I got to ask you about. And one of them is, I know just recently that Governor Beshear made it clear that there could be no congregational singing and no choir singing. So would you please address that with all of us who are on here?
It's going to be hard to do it without laughing, my friend, because Governor Beshear in issuing these new so-called requirements, he calls them requirements, not even guidelines. He says these are requirements, and if you're going to want to open or remain open, you got to follow these requirements. And so he says, we in a press release, so we've been in touch with the faith community, and we came up with these guidelines. He doesn't say which faith community and who he's been in touch with, but he may or may not have talked to someone in the faith community, but I am certain that he did not speak with even one law student taking constitutional law in law school, because this thing that he just passed, I mean, it's not worth the paper that it's written on. I don't know how he thinks that a governor or government can dictate to a church how it's going to sing or whether it's going to sing inside the church.
Come on.
I mean, this isn't China or North Korea. This is the United States of America and the state of Kentucky, and there is no governor that's going to tell the church you can meet, but you can't sing, or you can't have a Sunday school. It's preposterous. And you know what makes it even more preposterous is that the courts have already ruled that he cannot apply rules to churches that he doesn't apply to everyone else. And these requirements, right on top of the requirement, I don't have it handy, I mean, it's here somewhere, but it says requirements for houses of worship. So on their face, there are requirements that apply only to houses of worship and not to Walmart and not to law firms and not to accountants. So, I mean, you don't even have to move past the first line, past the first title to understand that these are also unconstitutional. Now, he says that these are going to be effective May 20th. So, I mean, tomorrow, these are not in effect. And tomorrow we have the judges' opinions that say that the church has just to follow the same general guidelines that everybody else follows. And we made it very clear that if he, in fact, he doesn't stand down, and if in fact he is going to purport to try to make these requirements effective on May 20th, we're going to be back in court not only with Maryville Baptist, our current client, but possibly with 100 other or 1,000 other churches. Because yes, I can't think of any, I don't know what faith community leader he's talked to, but I just can't think of any pastor worth his salt in the state of Kentucky that's going to be okay with the governor telling him when he can sing, how he can sing, how many songs he can sing in his church. It's just no way.
Yeah. Well, it just was really remarkable. And I had so many pastors that were, shooting me these questions, and that was the big one right there.
Yeah. So The practical question for them is the guidelines say on their face May 20th. So between now and May 20th, I think we have 2 Sundays, or at least 1 Sunday and 2 Wednesdays. They don't have to worry about it. We'll work it out in the courts between now and then and find out if he's really serious or if he's just trying to do a belated April 1st, April Fool's joke or something. We'll try to work it out. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Now, I know that your time is limited with us, and once you have to leave, then we're going to continue to discuss and pray into these things on our live Zoom. And I thank all of you that have joined in and jumped with us tonight. This is Harry Mihet, who's with us, and he is the Vice President of Legal Affairs and Chief Litigation Counsel at Liberty Counsel, which is in Orlando, Florida. Is that correct? Isn't that where Liberty Counsel is?
That's where headquarters are, but we have Washington, D.C., Lynchburg, Virginia, and affiliate lawyers throughout the country. Yes.
Absolutely. And one other thing real quick, I don't want to get off Kentucky, but I was excited to see some things that you guys posted today about like 1,300 pastors in California that are all kind of coming together. Is that correct?
3,000 actually in California. Right? Have signed a letter that says that as of May 31st, they are going to open their churches with social distancing, with proper precautions in place, but they're going to open in defiance of Governor Newsom, who has no end in sight. I mean, if it were up to him, I think he'd keep the churches permanently closed. But they're going to open 3,000 of them. And so I said, if Governor Newsom is hell-bent on keeping churches closed, he's going to have to build some bigger jails, because God's people are just not going to stand for it in California or really anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we cut you loose, I see 4 or 5 guys that are with us here in the Zoom room. If any one of you guys have a quick question and you'd like to ask Harry, would you just raise up your hand a minute where I can see you so that we can unmute you if you have a question before we cut him loose. And you and I will begin to get into some conversation and application and prayer of this. Any of you guys like that? Okay, this is Pastor Roy down in Western Kentucky. And so Roy Ellis, I unmuted you. So why don't you go ahead and ask your question there for Harry Mihet.
Thank you, sir, for being with us tonight. I just want to ask the question, would you clarify social distancing for us? That's, you said no more social distancing than required for other people. So could you just in a very brief way, just tell us what that entails?
Sure. 6 feet between people that are not part of the same household, that are not living together. So that means inside your churches, you should cordon off various seats so that people don't even have the option to sit next to each other than the people that they are living with. It's going to reduce capacity, of course, but that is something that the churches have to be committed to. Being 6 feet away, and that means that's the same for the choir. If you have a place where the choir is singing, 6 feet away, the pastor, the ushers, people should be very, very mindful of that and follow it. And it's difficult to do with children. So you may decide that it's better to not have children on church grounds if you find that you cannot enforce it, because the distancing should be enforced and enforced strictly. On our website at Liberty Counsel, we actually have a long list of precautions. This is just one of them, but there's a very practical list. Liberty Counsel, go to the Reopen Church Initiative, and you can actually find some practical steps. This is one of them, but propping doors open so that people don't have to make contact with the doors, designating one door for exit and one for entrance so people aren't passing by each other in close contact, perhaps using collection drop boxes instead of passing the plate around. I mean, there are multiple things that the church can do, should do, and must do in order to be a responsible citizen. You know, again, I have to stress this because we get accused so often by the people that are against us that we just want to flout the rules and we just want to tempt God and we think we can't get the virus. No, that's not what this is about. We want to show to the government that we love our people and our neighbors more so than the government loves them. And we're quite willing to voluntarily do what we think we should do and even what the government recommends sometimes. We just won't stand for discriminatory treatment, and we won't stand for interference and intermeddling by Caesar into matters that are God's. So, Brother Rick, I do have to go.
Yep.
And so I just want to say to you and to all your listeners, I mean, we covet your prayers, guys. We're fortunate and privileged to be in the front lines, but we remain cognizant that this battle we fight is not a battle against flesh and blood. And so the odds of success are very, very small, but our God is very, very big. And so I know this is a prayer meeting, and unfortunately I can't stand because I've got a lot of stuff happening, but I do covet your prayers. Please pray for us. Pray for each member of our team. Supernatural strength, wisdom. Pray for the light that we're taking to these dark places, for the arguments that we make to fall on fertile soil, and pray for liberty to prevail across this great country of ours. So thank you, Brother Rick, for having me with you tonight.
Well, look, man, we're so honored that you took your time to be with us tonight, away from your family. So we thank you so much for that. And please know that we are praying for you, for Liberty Counsel. God bless you. We look forward to tracking you guys, and we'll be in touch again. And God bless you. And thanks so much for joining us tonight.
God bless you, brother. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.